roles. So you want me to go ahead and introduce myself and then you can just kind of, okay.
Sounds great.
Sarah, it's very nice to have you with us tonight. My name is Christie Lewis, and I am a family support specialist for ParentLink. I have been or had the privilege of working with ParentLink for only probably about 8 months now. And so I'm happy to be here tonight, but my day job, ParentLink is a part-time thing that I do. My day job is also as an improvement consultant. And so what I do is I work with schools and staffs and supporting them in implementing positive behavior. So positive behavior supports and interventions is something that you'll hear a little bit more about as we get into the presentation. And I will go ahead and let my lovely co-host introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm Abby Underwood. I'm also a family support specialist for ParentLink. Also doing it part-time while I have a day job. I am an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker, doing therapy with families and kids and adults and really everybody, because we all need a little bit of that. So this is kind of a fun presentation that Christy and I have done a couple of times now, just to support parents in this crazy, weird time where things are just different, and our expectations of ourselves and our kids are different, and we'll talk all about that. So yeah, so let's get started. We want to keep this like pretty informal. I know you guys are muted right now because you're driving and dinnering and all of those important things, but if we have any questions or any thoughts that you want to kind of chime in with, especially because we're a small group, I hope Christy's on board with me with this, but I am totally welcome to those. You don't need to save it to the end or anything like that. Just hop in and let's talk.
Yes, please interrupt.
Yeah, it's more fun that way. All right. Christy, it doesn't look like I have control of the screen.
Let's see, it just wants me to like help out. So
that's like it.
All right. So our meeting agreements, short, informal, as we said, the easiest thing to do is to mute your microphone. Since you guys are already muted, we're good. Just as you both know, it already helps on that background noise. Speak up loudly and clearly so we can hear you, because we definitely want to make sure that we answer any questions that you have tonight. And so just really simple agreements, and we are ready for Abby to take over and give us some great information on handling the stress that we all know has kind of become a normal part of our new normal, as we called the presentation, because COVID has really changed the way that we do just about everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so these are kind of the things we hope that you will learn throughout our presentation. So by the end of our session, you'll be able to kind of set realistic expectations for you and your family during this time. We're going to explore the importance of emotional regulation, both for our kids and ourselves as the parents. We're going to consider our children's behavior as potential signs of trauma, have a coping skills plan that works for the whole family, determine a quarantine-friendly schedule, consider setting clear expectations at home, and become familiar with the purpose of ParentLink so that you know what else our organization can provide you guys during this time. So the first thing I really want to talk about is expectations. So I kind of think that during really all times, but especially a time like this, our expectations are kind of going to make or break what happens next and how we feel about how we parented and how we handled things during this pandemic. So I really like this quote by Bruce Lee: "I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations, and you're not in this world to live up to mine." So I like to share that my mother is a preschool teacher, which is really cool for her. And she's doing a lot of the like online Zooming things with her kids. And she is so cute. She like drops off these packets every week of like activities, and she drops them off at their house, and then they do them together over Zoom. And like, it's super cool, super cute. So she has some expectations for what I might be doing during this time with my 3-year-old. And I don't have time for that. I work 2 jobs and we do a lot more free play and independent play and kind of things that fit within our world and our life. I don't have time to organize all of these extra activities and be kind of this super mom. And that's okay. We're still getting through. My kid's still happy. She's still thriving. She's still learning. So kind of noticing that we're going to talk about like what other people's expectations are and whether or not we have to subscribe to those. So I kind of want you to think about your own life and your own family, and think about what your expectations are. What are your expectations of you? What are your expectations of your kids? And then what are those outside factor expectations, like my mother? Are they, what is your boss expecting? Are they expecting, 8 to 5 work with no interruptions? What are your coworkers expecting? What are your child's teachers expecting? I think we're kind of past school now for most people, which, like, thank goodness. But for now, but who knows what this fall holds. And then what are other family members? If other family members are kind of involved in you and your kids' lives, what are they expecting? And then when you have all that kind of list of what we're expecting in our head, is any of that realistic during this time frame? Is this really the goal, or is this kind of the dream, right? I think we're all not going to function at our 100% best right now, because we're in this whole new situation where we're constantly adjusting and constantly struggling to figure out what to do next. So are all those expectations realistic? Can we even meet those? Do you want to go ahead and click, Christy?
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
I was listening to you.
I know. You're I appreciate it. And so then I also want to bring in this idea of, like, we're all going through this huge thing, right? So we're really considering COVID and all of the sudden life changes that are coming with it as a collective trauma experience, right? So this means that, like, we're all as a whole going through trauma. Our kids are going through it. We're going through it. My mother's going through it. Like, everyone you know is a part of this collective trauma. So trauma is kind of anytime we have fear for our lives in any capacity, as well as kind of changes that go along with that. So we're all in this. So as parents, we're feeling a lot of emotions, right? We might be feeling uncertainty, fear, discomfort, grief over the life that was just a couple of months ago, overwhelm over all of these new expectations and all of these new roles that we're trying to juggle. And then our kids are experiencing the same stuff, even the little bitty ones. They often show their emotions a little bit differently, right? We as adults can talk about it and we can say, I'm feeling overwhelmed because I have 12 jobs right now, where our kids are just gonna throw tantrums or get mad that the TV isn't working the way they want it to, or refuse to do the activity that you put effort into it. That's the other reason I do activity. The more effort I put into it, the less likely she is to do it. It's ridiculous. So I really like this graphic of what kids' behaviors might be showing us, right? And so kind of if we can start to be a little bit of detectives and see behavior as a clue to how our kids are feeling instead of just seeing the behavior, we start to process it differently, right? So if we just see our kid throwing a remote across the room, we step into kind of punishment mode, right? If that's not okay. If we see our kid having a lot of frustration about the fact that he can't see his friends and all he has to do is watch TV, we're more understanding and we're more ready to help him through that emotion instead of punishing him for the action that happened because of it. So the bad news is that, like I said, we're going through a trauma right now and we can't protect our kids from trauma. So even when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, we can't totally protect our kids. We can do the best we can. We can teach them not to talk to strangers and to hold hands when we cross the street, but we can't wrap them in a bubble. And sometimes stuff happens, like it is right now. But the good news is that we can increase what we call our protective factors to make ourselves as their parents and them more resilient. So I love the word resilient because it really speaks to our ability to bounce back from stuff, right? So I'm sure you guys have been in the world long enough to know that life comes at you, right? Like stuff happens that we didn't ask for and we don't want in our world. And yet we kind of overcome it, right? I hope that all of you here have survived 100% of the days you've lived so far. It seems like it. So knowing that we can actually do things that make ourselves more resilient and can make our kids more resilient means come what may, pandemic or worse, they're going to bounce back and they're going to be okay. And that feels really good as a parent. Even though we can't protect them from everything, we can kind of bubble wrap them and make them not as susceptible to whatever's coming. So these are the 5 protector factors in this little house right here. So the first and kind of the bottom is that concrete support of times in need. So this is, who do you turn to? Who do you have in your life that is really there for like actual support? So I don't know what anybody's situation is, but I know a lot of people are losing jobs or having reduced incomes or things like that these days. So what do you have in your life that kind of is your safety net, right? Do you have other extended family? We know we have some kind of state and federal safety nets, but what are the kind of concrete supports that help us out when we're in really sticky situations? Next is parent resilience. So the more bounce back ability, the more bounce back ability that we have, the better our kids are going to do, right? Because they're going to see us bounce back and they're going to see us get through the struggle, and they're going to do the same thing with us. Knowledge of parenting and child development. You're here tonight increasing that, so props for that. But the more we know what to expect from our kids and what's appropriate to expect from our kids, the better that we're protecting them, because we're not expecting crazy high standards during, a crazy time like this. And the social emotional competence of children. So the ability for our kids to, like we were talking about earlier, really verbalize what's going on, right? As opposed to just acting out. And all kids are going to act out as a part of their behavioral or emotional expression. But the more that they're also able to talk about it and to tell us the words that they're feeling, the better we are going to be able to help them, right? So instead of just throwing the remote across the room, maybe throwing the remote across the room and then being like, Mom, I'm just so angry that we're stuck inside all the time, right? If they pair that phrase with the action, then we know better how to help them. And so then, again, that increases that resilience. And then social connections. And I think this one is one that started out really tricky in this pandemic. And then, I don't know, people have risen to the occasion like crazy and being creative and figuring out how to socially connect in this socially distant world. So I know that I've been really impressed with things that I've seen of just our creativity to not lose that, even though I physically haven't seen another person other than my doctor in, I don't even know how long. I think we're approaching 2 months. It's weird. But yet I feel kind of more socially connected in a lot of ways than in my normal life, because people are purposefully reaching out. So making sure that you're doing that for yourself and that you're doing that for your kids, right? And so making sure that, we might start to look at certain activities a little bit different. I know all parents have kind of a hate relationship with video games, and I'm on board with most of that. But there's a lot of video games where kids can play together, right? So these friends that they're not seeing at school anymore, they have a way to connect to in kind of a really meaningful way to them. So maybe we start to label that in our minds a little bit differently. We label it as social connection instead of screen time, and then we feel like better parents. And we're increasing these protective factors for our kids, and that can be really powerful. So now I want to think about kind of going back. No, that was right. It's just kind of a repeated slide. No, one more. There you go. Oh, yep. Okay. Woohoo! So now I want you to go back to those expectations that we kind of listed out mentally a minute ago, and really consider what you want to change. What expectations did you come here tonight holding for yourself or your kids, or that you're holding on from someone else that you just want to do something different with, or even let go of, right? I mentioned the example of my mom. I know she has great intentions. I know she wants the best for her granddaughter, and I can fully respect all of that and not put that pressure on myself to follow through with it, right? So that's one I've chosen to let go of, and I don't have any guilt about that. I'm making a good choice there, I think. So kind of think for yourself, what do you want to change, or what do you want to let go of? And give yourself permission to do that. Okay, so now I want to kind of sidestep a little bit and talk about our own emotions. So this is kind of part of that house. But thinking about how we're managing our own emotions during all of this, and what that does or doesn't do for our kids. So most people learn how to show, share, and manage our emotions from our parents. So what are our kids learning right now and all the time? So I first like to talk a little bit about the brain and how emotion functions in the brain. I really love this. This is Dan Siegel from The Whole Brain Child, a great book if you're looking for a resource to kind of dig deeper into this stuff. But he really talks about this upstairs brain and downstairs brain. And he does this little like hand thing, which he says that this looks like a brain that I never really thought about. Your fist looks like a brain, but he calls kind of this is our prefrontal cortex right here, where our smart stuff is, and then the back is our brainstem, and that's kind of our downstairs brain. So our downstairs brain is our basic functions, right? It's our emotional reactivity, it's our fight, flight, or freeze, it's our attachment. Some people will refer to this as like our lizard brain because it's a very like old reactive part of the brain. We don't even have to really try to use it. It just happens, right? It's that fast. And then over here is our upstairs brain, smart part. And this is where all the good stuff happens, right? This is where our decision making, our planning, our understanding, our control over our emotions in our body, empathy, morality, all that really good, intelligent stuff happens here. So what happens is when we, what he likes to call flip our lid, when we are overwhelmed by any emotion, we lose connection with all of this up here, all of that really good stuff that I just listed off, that you might imagine is important for parenting, right? And we're just back here in our brainstem. That's all we have access to. So we are reacting. We are fight, flight, or freezing. We don't have good control over our body or our emotions, or our words or any of that good stuff. So again, we do this and our kids do this. If you've ever watched, a toddler in a full-on tantrum, that is the classic lid flip, right? Like they are just a ball of emotion and have no control over their bodies at all. And kind of, we make mistakes during this part, right? Like this is when we do things that aren't okay, when we say things that aren't okay, and we kind of, once this comes back, we have a lot to apologize for, usually, at least if you're anything like me. All right, go to that next slide. Oh. So I really like to kind of think in my own parenting and when I'm working with parents as like, we are our kids' emotional models. They're learning how to deal with all of it from us. And so if we want them to handle themselves in a good way, then we have to show them that, right? That's where that starts, is us showing them good emotional management. So what I like to do is kind of learn some skills if that's something that maybe your parents didn't teach you, the good skills of dealing with emotions, because like I said, they usually come from our parents, and some of our parents didn't really know what they were doing either. And then really tell our children what we're doing as we're going through them, or have them do it with you. So a classic here in my house is, Mommy is really frustrated and I'm about to say something that is not kind, so I'm going to walk away and take some deep breaths. Would you like to walk with me or do you want to stay here? And I spell it out that way and I follow through and I walk into the other room and I take my deep breaths. And it doesn't matter if she comes with me or not, but she's watching, right? She's watching me. I could just take deep breaths internally, but then she's not really seeing all of that, right? That's a very internal experience. But when I'm doing it, when I'm saying what I'm doing, she's like, oh, that's how we handle anger, right? My mom walks away from the situation that's frustrating and she takes some deep breaths. And I really like to kind of enforce these ground rules with both, again, us as parents and with our kids. All emotions are okay, right? A big one that kind of a lot of people feel like is not okay is anger. But like we all get angry. Anger does something for us. It makes sure we don't get run over by the world. It makes sure we stand up for ourselves and what we believe in. So it's okay to get angry. It's not okay to hit people, right? It's not all behaviors are okay. It's not okay to scream at someone when you're angry with them. So we kind of remember that all emotions are okay, all behaviors are not. So at this point, people are like, okay, yeah, I get this is important, but I'm also a human going through the middle of a pandemic. So how on earth am I supposed to do this? And that's a great question. So I pulled this, I really like this plan specifically. So I usually when I do this presentation, I kind of have some just various skills, but I really like this CARES plan specifically for dealing with the pandemic. So this was developed by Dr. Joel Hughes out of Kent State University. And it's based on a lot of different psychological principles, and forms this really cute acronym of CARES. And the reason I liked it for this presentation is that it's appropriate for both you and the kids. So this is kind of a way that you can think about how you're coping with things and how you're getting through things that it can be applicable for both ways. So it works for me and it works for them. And it's something we can kind of all do together. And so it really goes back to that emotional modeling of like, this is how I want you to deal with stuff. So this is how I'm dealing with stuff. So the C stands for commit. So this is really about committing to live a life consistent with your most deeply held values, right? We all have values. We all prioritize those values in different ways. So kind of starting to notice, regardless of what's going on at this moment in our world or this moment in my household, what's actually important to me, right? And I think this is something to really think about in the climate of the pandemic, of what is important to me. If family is your top held value, but this is both like a blessing and a curse, right? With your immediate family, you're getting a lot of time to focus on that value. With grandparents or other extended family, you may not be getting any time to focus on that value, and that can be really painful. Is health a really important value? If so, you're probably being one of the more careful people out there, following all of the CDC guidelines and making sure you're really safe. So just kind of think about what it is that you value the most. And I think the kind of something we're running into right now for a lot of people is sometimes these values conflict, right? If health and family are really important to you, and you know that going to see a grandparent puts health at risk, but it meets your family value, then that's kind of an internal battle of what you should do and how you should handle yourself. So anyway, kind of thinking through what is important to you and making sure that you're living as close to that as you can, right? And this is, again, where we kind of have to get creative right now. If relationships and family are your top held values, then, you know, up those video chats, right? Make sure you're connecting with your people, even if you can't physically go to their house. If helping others is a really big value to you, you know, kind of finding out how you can donate or safely volunteer, or these different things that you can kind of do something. So whenever we're committed and living in accordance to our values, we feel good, right? We feel kind of aligned with ourselves. Instead of the kind of being reactive and living this really shallow and frantic life. And I think I saw this a lot with people that I work with, like this, we kind of all went through this like wave of when everything first closed and we all started staying home, everyone was living this frantic life. We're like, right, how do I do anything? I got to figure this out. I got to like figure out how to school my kids. I got to figure out where I'm getting groceries. Like it was all really frantic, right? And then kind of fast forward 2 weeks, everybody kind of fell into this pattern, right? Whatever their pattern was, they were kind of in it. They were getting used to it. It still wasn't ideal, but it was more normal, right? We adapt, right? We adapt to things. Oh, where did I find toilet paper? I actually haven't had any trouble finding toilet paper. I don't know. I know it's been a problem for some. I don't live down in Phelps County though. I'm up in Boone County. Yeah, it's a good question though. Where do you find toilet paper? Who knew that was going to be one of the biggest hiccups of all of this, right? Nobody saw that coming. So the A in our CARES acronym stands for accept. So accepting that some fear and anxiety is normal, right? So the goal here is not to get rid of these feelings. The goal is to get through these feelings. So noticing that if you're scared and you're anxious and you're overwhelmed and you don't know what to do about what's coming next, like, yeah, me too. And everybody I know too, right? Like we're all in this and this is scary. Why wouldn't you have a little bit of fear? Even if it's not fear of the virus itself, the fear of your income changing or the fear of life being this way forever. You know, there's lots of fear. What you should not do is deny or push away this fear. So just kind of let it happen, acknowledge that, yeah, this is freaking scary and it's okay to feel that scaredness. So the problem really starts when we refuse to feel those emotions. They always bubble up, right? When we try to ignore emotions, they just kind of become like compressed air, right? If you ever try to squeeze a balloon, you can't just squeeze it forever. It's gonna pop. And fear has emotional informational value. So it tells us something about what we need to do or what we need to think about, right? Our anxiety is there to protect us. I always like to tell kids, if I didn't have anxiety, I wouldn't buckle up my seatbelt, right? I'd be like, I'm probably fine. But instead, this little voice in my head goes, but you could get in a car accident, Abby. So I buckle up every time. And so we want a little bit of information from that fear. We don't want the fear to control us. We don't want it to kind of drive the bus, so to speak, but we want it there to do what it's supposed to do. And remembering that emotions are a lot like the weather. They kind of come and go. They can be really strong. Like, I don't know if you guys had it, but we had a really strong storm a couple of weeks ago, and my windows were like shaking with thunder in the middle of the night, right? Emotions can be really strong like that. And then they're gone. And then the sun comes back and it kind of fades away. So kind of recognizing that whatever the emotion you're going through, it's going to pass. And the best way to let it pass is to just let it. And again, this is with our kids as well. So accepting that our kids are going to go through these waves and have these storms. I shared with the last group that we did this, that my toddler, or when she was more of a toddler, she's more of a preschooler now. But when she was more of a toddler, she, when she would start to have her big tantrums and big meltdowns, I was like, I'm all about emotions, right? Like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix this for her. And I'm going to like talk her through it and have her take deep breaths, and it's going to work. It didn't work. In fact, every time I tried to really help her with her feelings, it would make it worse and worse and worse. And she would continue to escalate until eventually what I realized was she didn't need me to save her from that emotion. She just needed me to be there and be quiet. So that's kind of the different approach I took. She'd start to fall apart because I gave her the purple plate instead of the blue plate, heaven forbid, right? And I'd just sit down and go, yeah, I can tell you're upset. I'm here if you need me. And it'd fizzle out, right? She'd get through that emotion, she'd get through that wave, and then she'd be ready for lunch. So the more that I tried to fix it and to change it, the more resistant she became, because her little body didn't want to squeeze the balloon and to stuff that feeling. Her little body just wanted to let it go. And the moment that I allowed that, I really gave her the freedom to work through it on her own. And that's a lot more powerful of an approach. The R stands for relax. So we're at the R in cares. So learn some kind of stress management. I'm not a big fan of this idea that we should take the pandemic time to like learn new skills, because I don't think we learn very well when we're in like chaotic emotional states. But if you're going to learn one new skill, make it stress management. This is a good skill to learn right now because it actually applies. If you want to bake bread, do that too, but mostly learn how to relax. So there's a lot of different approaches. I'm not going to talk through a ton. I'm going to give you kind of a couple ideas. But any of these words, Google them, and there's so much information out there for them, and they're really easy to learn. So progressive muscle relaxation, guided imagery, mindfulness-based stress reduction, typo. Really any kind of relaxation techniques that you see out there. So find something that fits for you. Meditation is not for everyone. Like theoretically it is, because there's all this research and it's super good for you, but a lot of people don't like it. And if you don't like it, then you're not going to do it, and then it's worthless, right? So find something that fits for you, that you like, and that relaxes you. So anytime we're reducing our arousal, right, which is kind of what relaxation does, it kind of steals that oxygen from the anxiety fire, right? We don't have as much kind of propelling us. And so then you experience less stress, tension, and worry. And we could all use a little more of that, or a little less of that, I guess, I should say. So again, we want to teach these to our kids as well as ourselves. So deep breathing is where I always start with people. I kind of mentioned that's one of my own skills a minute ago, because it's the fastest way to re-engage that upstairs brain that we talked about earlier. So when you are in fight, flight, or freeze mode, you are not taking deep breaths. You're doing these like panic breaths, right? So the minute that you start to take a deep breath, it kind of sends this internal message that like, I'm okay, right? Because if there was real danger, if a tiger was chasing you, you would not be like, I should take a deep breath right now, right? That like is not going to be what you're doing. So just the fact that you're taking a deep breath sends that message that like things are okay and I can calm down and I can re-engage my brain and think through this problem. So this can be as simple as literally just taking a big breath. And we always want to make sure we're breathing down into our belly as opposed to this kind of shallow chest breathing. So it can be just as easy as that. I also like these kids versions though, even for myself, I kind of find them fun sometimes. And kids really like that like imagination stuff to go with their coping skills. So these are just some fun ways to do that. So pizza breathing is you pretend you have your favorite kind of pizza in front of you. Mine is pineapple and black olives because I'm a weirdo. And you smell it in, and then you cool it off. Right, so just having that kind of paired imagery with it is really helpful for kiddos. For especially our little kiddos, bubbles or pinwheels can be really helpful. My daughter has this little, we call her a cozy tent. It's a little like tent that I have set up with different coping skills in it, basically. And she has a pinwheel in there and bubbles, actually, because she proved to me she can be responsible with them. And this is kind of something that almost tricks her into deep breathing, right? So it's just something to play with in her mind. But if she's playing with either one, she's doing deep breathing. And so we kind of can hack our little ones that way and teach them that something like that could be a coping skill for them. And then my favorite, especially for kids who get really angry, dragon breathing is super fun. They love it because you just breathe like a dragon. So you, and then you rah, your fire. And again, it's taking that deep breath, but it's also like, there's something really cathartic about like the rah face. And kids, especially our angry kids, really like to do stuff like that. And so with any skill, you're going to need to practice this, right? Both with your kiddos and with yourself. It isn't the time to tell your child to take deep breaths. The time to teach them that is not when they're already upset, right? The first time I taught my daughter all these skills that are in her little cozy tent was just a day where she was chill hanging out. I'm like, oh, look at this box I made you. Let's look inside of it and see what we can do with these things. And by talking through them and teaching them in that calm moment, right? This is when our brain is down like this. This is when we can learn, right? If we wait till we're like this, it doesn't matter what you say. They're already lid flipped. But if we can kind of learn while we're in a calm state and practice while we're in a calm state, then we're ready to go. I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but this is another easy grounding technique that I like to share, which is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this is, again, when your lid is flipped and you know you're kind of freaking out, whether it's anger or anxiety or what have you. It's easy enough to remember, so it doesn't take too much brain power that you can remember it when your lid is flipped, but it also distracts you a little bit from what's going on and grounds you in the present moment. So our senses are always tied to the present moment, and so this kind of utilizes that. So thinking through just real quick, naming 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So again, that kind of pulls you away from whatever stressful thoughts were kind of attacking you at that moment and lets you be calm for a moment. And then once this is back engaged, you can think through whatever challenge you're up against. So E, going back to the CARES acronym, E is for exercise. So we know that, just exercise is good for us, right? Like I'm not here to tell you that. You probably already know that from everyone that's ever talked to you about exercise. But especially getting outside, especially during this time where we're all stuck inside, is really powerful. There's a lot of research that even just having greenery, like I'm looking out my window as I say that, that's why I'm pointing, can really give us a lot of good hormones and a lot of good kind of feel good things that are happening in our brain. And it's taking care of ourselves, right? So we all want to avoid getting sick during all of this. That's kind of an underlying thing. And getting exercise and good sleep and eating well, all of that's part of this, right? It's not the only thing that's going to protect you, but it's definitely part of it. And it's a very powerful medicine for things like depression and anxiety and all of that. Again, not that it's going to solve it 100%, but it's part of what adds up to maintaining health in both the physical sense as well as the mental sense. So whatever that looks like for you, it doesn't have to be a regimented, difficult program, but just going for walks around the block or playing tag with your kids, or kind of these little things can add up to that health. All right, and then the S for CARES is about setting a schedule and sticking to it. Again, if your house is anything like mine, oh, hello, Teresa. We've got a new person joining us. If your house is anything like mine, time has kind of started to lose meaning a little bit. Days kind of come and go, but setting a schedule kind of helps us feel more normal, right? Even in this really abnormal time. So setting scheduled times for whatever we have going on during the day, whether it's work, school, chores, exercise, sleep, getting up at the same time every day instead of, ignoring the alarm and sleeping till 11 and then staying up till 2 and all of those kinds of things that maybe we did in college. Getting dressed. This is a really kind of a funny one because there's something really significant about putting on clothes as opposed to just wearing whatever we slept in. That kind of tells us that we're in a different space, right? I think Christy's laughing because I made the joke at our last presentation that I am a big fan of this idea of moving from your night jammies to your daytime jammies. But just having that differentiation, yes, leggings absolutely count. I mentioned this at the very beginning when I'm 8 months pregnant, and the best part of this pandemic for me is that I have not worn real pants in 2 months, and I will not until that baby comes. And so it's great to not have to wear real pants. But I do still make this shift from whatever I wore to bed to my daytime pajamas, but they're still pajamas, it's fine. But just that act of changing helps our brain kind of make this shift into its daytime and, you know, its productive time or whatever. Eating at set times, kind of a similar thing. I think for a lot of people, meals have become this kind of like, it's like the thing we look forward to right now because there's not a lot going on in our days, maybe. So instead of resisting the urge to snack all day and letting yourself kind of look forward to that meal and expect that meal. A big one right here is don't watch news media all day and don't think about the pandemic all day. So do inform yourselves, do, you know, seek out the proper information, but not all day. Don't let your whole day fall into learning and worrying about what's going on in the world. Set a time for that. In fact, I can't remember if there's a slide on this or not, but there's an idea of setting kind of a worry time if worry is a big problem for you. Yep, there it is. Okay. If worry is a big problem for you during this time, to literally schedule that worry. So kind of set aside an hour or a period of your day where you kind of let yourself fall into it, right? Going back to that A part of the accept part of this method of just let yourself have all of the worries that you're having and think through all of the scary things going on, and then end it and get back to life. So we kind of contain it in that way instead of letting it seep out over your whole day. And of course, it's still going to pop up during the rest of your day. But when it does pop up, you just remind yourself that like, I've got time for that later, right? It's on my schedule to sit with that worry. So I don't need to do it while I'm trying to play with my kids or while I'm trying to be present in this Zoom meeting or whatever it is. Yeah, and by using that ability to focus on the positive, we're more focused on the positive, right? We enjoy the positive stuff more. We feel more productive. And then our worry time just becomes less, which is really helpful. All right, well, I've talked a ton, so I'm going to pass it off to Christy now, and she's going to talk to you guys about managing behavior in your kiddos.
Well, a lot of it is, it's really funny because now the second time that we've done this, I realized just how much what I come in and say builds off of everything that you just said. So it works really well together. As I talked about earlier, my daytime job is really working with schools and helping them set up positive behavior interventions and support in school systems. And so the really nice thing about this is it works great at home too. It really is. And what I'm talking about really is just when I go into a school, I help them think about what's really important. And so I help them think about what kind of a framework they want to set up. We talk a lot about having evidence-based interventions, things that we know are going to work because research has been done to support it. And we want to think about how do we look at academics when you think about school and you send your kids to school. A lot of times we have expectations for how that teacher is going to be working with your student. We're going to be expecting that that teacher is showing your student step by step what it is they need to learn when it comes to math, letters, the alphabet, reading, any of those things. We don't do a lot of that when it comes to behavior. Sometimes we just kind of assume that kids are going to get it. And we want to make sure that on the flip side, that we actually really take the time to teach behavior the same way we would if we were teaching our kids how to make a cake. We're going to take them through the steps. And so what this does for us at home is it eliminates a lot of the gray area what we might run into when kids don't meet our expectations. And we talked about, Abby talked about all those expectations that we can have for ourselves and pressure that sometimes is put on us by other people's expectations. Well, we want to take that away. We want to say, this is what mommy and daddy want to see at home. This is what it needs to look like, and really be clear when we're setting those expectations at home. So the reason we do this is because we know that kids benefit from having that routine and that structure. Abby's talking about, having a schedule. That's important, that we continue to have that schedule at home. We've been doing this now for what, has it been like 2 months that COVID feels like forever? I think I've lost track of time. We need to have that continued schedule. I mean, there's some flexibility in there. Don't be rigid. As Abby was saying, don't place a lot of pressure on yourself and try to meet, some unnatural expectations. But we know that if they have a routine and structure, they feel safe. And that's what we try to do when we're in a classroom. Same thing that kids can benefit from at home. Do they have jobs to do that make them feel like they are a useful part of the family? They have something to contribute. So setting those expectations early is really going to help alleviate some of those behaviors when kids don't know exactly what their role is in the family. We know that things like that too, when we talked about those protective factors, when Abby was talking about the house, that social emotional learning that comes back to how we regulate ourselves and how we interact is super important. And we learn those things at home, from our parents and from our experiences that are happening around us. But if we have that routine and that structure in place as well, we have that sense of security inside that really helps to alleviate some of those behaviors that can come from anxiety. And those are some of the things that we really put in place when we're in school. One thing that I want to really kind of touch on, and Abby said something about this too, and I remember the anger, when she was talking about anger. It's super important. Anger is an emotion. It's just simply an emotion that we have. And it is part of us, just like being happy and being sad is as well. I ask school staff to think about behavior as a form of communication. And Abby made a great point when she said a 2-year-old having a tantrum, that is their form of communication, because they don't have maybe the social skills to verbalize how they're feeling. And so for them, it's acting out. And so if parents can kind of help put in perspective that their child's behavior is a way of communicating for them, might not be the most appropriate and the one that you really desire for them to be doing, but it is a form of communication. And it really puts us in the mindset that we need to help them problem solve a better way of letting us know when something is wrong. And so one of the neat things about that communication is that we can set up the environment around us, because we obviously know that our little people are in control of their bodies. We can't necessarily control them, but we can put some things in place that can help set them up to follow those patterns of behavior that we want to see. And that's what I work with teachers and in schools a lot about, is being proactive in how we set up our environment around us. So we can do that at home the same way we would in a school classroom. What do? Do we have routines, schedules, things in place? And so that all comes back to, do our kids know what the expectation is? So being clear. One of the easiest things to do when you're setting up those expectations is call a family meeting and have the kids help you plan. Because what we know is if they have ownership in what we've decided is important in our family, then they're going to be more committed and more respectful of really paying attention to what that looks like. And so we can talk about the things that we need to see as parents, and then ask for feedback from our kids when we're deciding what those family rules should look like. We're doing it all together. And it's something that we can come up with, and we can decide this is important to us. And so these are what we're going to say our expectations are. That also comes back to when Abby was talking earlier, she talked about, there are things that can affect how we are feeling and how we act. And so if they're tired, if they're hungry, if they're upset, and now we have a pandemic going on around us, so the behavior that we're seeing may not necessarily be what we would like to see. And so by helping them understand what things need to look like at home and really keeping that same kind of proactive environment, we can help to alleviate some of that fear and that anxiety. So what that looks like is, let's say we've had our family meeting and we've talked about what the kitchen should look like. Maybe it's it's lunchtime. And so we've decided that it's, your job to take care of yourself, because a lot of times now parents are trying to either work from home and they're trying to juggle a whole bunch of other things. And so it might be older kids taking care of younger kids, or even teaching our younger kids how to do things for themselves. And so Abby was talking about modeling being super important. That's exactly it. We're going to set up that expectation and say, okay, so I want you to be a responsible citizen within our house. And that means that if you're fixing your own lunch, you need to clean up your mess. And so going through what each step of that would look like, because a 5 or 6 or 7-year-old is probably not going to know what standards your level of cleaning up after yourself looks like. So we make sure that we model that, we practice it with them, and then we continue to reinforce it. Here's where we drop the ball a lot as adults. When we teach something, we don't necessarily, especially when it comes to behavior, academics were great. We're like, look how you added 2 + 2 and you got 4. When it comes to behavior, we don't necessarily say, you know what, when you got out of the shower, you picked up your towel and you hung it up on the towel rack so I would not slip on it or trip on it, or your sister could, dry her hands. That was super responsible. We give them specific feedback and we help them to understand that this is what you did. And I describe it just as kind of like a video camera. You describe to them what you saw them do that met your expectations, and you're reinforcing that. You're drawing attention to that positive behavior. So it's super important that once we've taught and modeled and we've practiced what cleaning up after yourself looks like, we give them positive feedback. What we tend to do, and I remember hearing something earlier when Abby was talking about punishment, we tend to go for a punitive approach. We tend to, okay, Sam didn't hang his towel up. Well, Sam is probably, 7 years old, and Sam may have gotten distracted. There's no telling. Their attention span's really short. So we want to take that opportunity to reteach and let Sam know that when you get out of the shower, mom expects you to hang your towel up, because the towel's going to dry out. It's going to be ready for you to use next time, and it's safer that way. It helps keep our bathroom clean. When he follows through with that, we're going to draw attention to it and say, hey, Sam, I really appreciate the fact that you were responsible by hanging up your towel when you got out of the shower. Nice. We're going to give them that feedback and make sure that we're drawing attention to the good things they do. We describe it in schools as being a ratio. And so it becomes really important that we want to be paying attention more to the positive things and the appropriate behaviors that we want to see, because that keeps our home a nice, pleasant place. If we are constantly drawing attention to things that our kids are doing wrong, how does that make you feel? It really can become a real negative place. I know as an adult, I don't want to go into a business or my place of work if my boss is constantly writing me about something I didn't do, right? It makes you not want to be there. So we do that same thing when we're talking with teachers. We tell them that, we want to set up that positive environment. Works at home as well. If we want our kids to want to be there and for it to be safe and a place that they want to be a part of, then we talk about making sure we're paying more attention when they are doing those appropriate behaviors and those expectations that we've set up. So remember, we talk about systems, and we can talk about systems at home too. We have that meeting and we set up those systems in place that we want to make sure that our house is a clean place, and that's going to take some work on our part as a parent. We do the work up front by teaching them. We give reminders, because I can guarantee you I need reminders all day long. If I have a task that I'm supposed to accomplish, I would really appreciate if someone sends me an email prompt when I haven't followed through, and I need that. And I think a lot of us adults need reminders as well. Sometimes we expect our kids to remember the very first time. They will get it over time, but it takes what I call pre-corrects, reminding them, giving them helpful prompts, because I want to see them be successful. I would rather tell them, you did such an awesome job of taking the trash out and putting the garbage can back under the sink when you were done. Thanks so much. That was responsible. I'd rather say that than say, why did you do that? Or say, or, you know, raise my voice or draw attention to something that they weren't successful in, because we're really trying to build that internal, that locus of control, as well as that good feelings about themselves. And by drawing more attention to those appropriate things that they do and following our expectations, we're setting them up. We're setting them up to be successful. So that can look like simply thinking about, remember that family meeting, we're thinking about what we want to do in our house. How do we want our house to look? When we talk about in a school, we ask them to choose 3 to 5 big expectations. So I'm going to tell you 95% of the schools that implement in the state of Missouri have respectful, responsible, and safe. Because you can put just about any behavior underneath those 3 things. And so when we think about our home or the different times of periods that we might have, like mealtime, bedtime, those different time segments during the day that might need some rules or to guide them, that helps us to set up some positive things that we can teach our kids, like bedtime, being polite when you're reminded about bedtime. How many of us really can't stand it when our kids like throw a fit and nag because they don't want to go to bed yet? So if our expectation is that they're polite when they're reminded about bedtime and they say, yes, ma'am, or okay, because we've set the timer and we're like, you have 5 minutes. I'm giving them a positive prompt. I'm giving them a timer to tell them in 5 minutes, my expectation is that you're going to go to bed. I have, as Abby said, not in that moment, before taught them what that looks like when I tell them to go to bed. What it does is it means that we are setting the expectation and we are teaching exactly what we want to see them do. And then remember, the important thing that we drop the ball on sometimes is giving them feedback. You know, the timer went off, you turned the television off, you got up out of your seat and you went straight to bed. That was super respectful. Thank you for following those rules. We want to make sure that they understand exactly what they did, and we're going to give them some positive feedback. That can help a lot, and it goes a lot to help build that relationship with our kids, that they're valued and that they have an important role in our family as well. So this is kind of just a sample matrix. There are other sample matrices that you can use as well. You can come up with whatever fits your family needs. You decide what's important, what times of the day you want to have talked about. But this is that structure. This follows that schedule. And it also means that kids know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. I like this one here because it goes with home every day, which is basically where we're at right now, right? We are stuck at home. And so it's going through the day. And if, you know, school time is on there, what does that look like? What's our expectations? And then remember, we're teaching that, we're modeling that, we have our kids practice. And I'm going to tell you in school, what we tell teachers is if you notice the behaviors are not looking like what you need it to look like, you're going to go back and reteach and practice that some more. So we can do the same thing at home. If you get come out of your home office and things do not look the way they need to do in the kitchen or need to be, then we might need to have a little booster session and talk about what it means to clean up. But we're taking that as an opportunity not to yell and maybe punish or condemn. We're taking that as an opportunity to reteach because we want them to be successful when they go out into the real world and have those skills. These are life skills. This is not just skills that they need at home. These are life skills. And so there are sample matrices. It's a funny word, but if you Google that word, you can come up with some matrix ideas. There's also a website that you can go to that is pbis.org, pbis.org. And if you go under the family section, it will talk to you a lot about helping you set up your expectations in your home matrix that fits your family needs. So I love it because it's all about what's going to work in our house. Now we talked about reinforcing with positive feedback. That's great. That is the most powerful tool that we as adults have because our kids want to please us. It's kind of like our dogs too. They want to know they're pleasing us, right? Kids are the same way. They love to hear that positive feedback, get the hugs. You can work towards family rewards, and it doesn't have to be something expensive. You can tell the kids, hey, listen, if we keep the house cleaned up for a week, And think about your kids' ages, because sometimes they can't remember from day to day what, you know, they've done right. So you might have to adjust those times that when they earn rewards. But maybe if you can continue to keep the kitchen cleaned up for a week, then you are going to earn a special story time or pizza night or something like that. You want to keep it positive, and the same way that we get a paycheck when we go and do our job, it's okay to reinforce those expectations and those behaviors we want to see at home positively. And we can do something as simple as just spending some time with our kids, because a lot of them, giving them that one-on-one attention is going to be super important. As I was talking about the positive 5-to-1 ratio, that you get what you pay attention to. So what we talk about with school staffs is that if you pay a lot of attention in a classroom full of young children to negative behaviors, guess what you're going to get more of? Negative behaviors. Because if you have a student who's attention seeking, they're going to amp it up, and you're going to have other kids that say, oh, okay, I can't get recognized for sitting here doing my job and doing it right, then I'm going to do something that communicates my need, and you may not like what they come up with. So let's pay attention and reinforce positively. Where I told you, we as adults kind of drop that ball. Draw attention to those things that you said, hey, this is what mom and dad are looking for. This is important. And so just think about how you could give some positive attention. And simply having a plan for what's going to happen when they don't follow through. It is not all fluff and sugar puffs. I'm not telling you that you have to be super sunny, sunshine all the time. We are human. There are consequences. And so have a plan for what happens when you have been taught, we have modeled practice together. Now there's a consequence for you not following what mommy and daddy said you needed to do. Whether it's timeout or you lose this privilege, decide as a family and teach your kids, hey, guess what? Here's what we said is gonna happen. We need to see this. And here's what's gonna happen if you don't follow our expectations. And I use that language with kids from young age up. They can understand what that looks like. And so really being clear is gonna help a lot. Rachel, have any of our people that are a part of the conversation, are they aware of what Parent Link has to offer? Because this was part of our talk with our last group. And I know we're right at 6 o'clock, so I don't wanna hold everybody over. What do you think?
I think maybe one is semi-familiar, but if you want to give an overview, I think it'd be new information for the majority.
Okay, I'll be really quick. So Parent Link basically is an organization that Abby and I both work for. It is a warm line. And what we mean by a warm line is it's not designed to be a crisis line, but it's a helpline that parents can call to access resources. They can either have a conversation with the parenting expert that is on there, and I say expert, we are parents along with you, but what we're experts in is connecting you to outside resources. If we don't know the answer, we have the opportunity to look and provide you with the resource that can help you connect it. We can find it, let's put it that way. So warm line means that you can call in and ask any of your questions, and we can support you through providing information for you. We have 3 different lines that you are able to call in on. We have our main line that comes either through our website. You can also find it on our Facebook page. There is a kinship caregiving line that you can call, and that basically is intended for families that are not parents. A lot of times we have, and you maybe one of you is in that situation where it's grandparents raising grandkids or aunts and uncles. And so that kinship caregiving line, also we can answer questions from anybody, but we have some resources to connect those families with that may be beneficial to them. There's also a TEL-Link line, which is about maternal and childhood health. And so we get some referrals for either pediatricians, doctor services for pregnancy. We can connect families with WIC services, any of those things that might relate directly to either maternal or child health. That's a line that we have for that as well. So there's 3 different ways that you can connect with Parent Link to get information. This just talks a little bit about some of the things that we can do, and I kind of mentioned those. I really like the tell link. I'm not trained on that one, but that is during the day from 8 to 5. Anyone can call in and connect with those resources. And if you don't have the ability yourself, our operators, our specialists can help you actually physically fill out forms and do things like that as well. So it's a great resource for parents or other adults to connect with. I like the ages and stages questionnaires too. This is available for children in early developmental stages, we'll say maybe 1 to 2 months, up through the age of 6. And so there are several different questionnaires that can help identify when children are having lags in communication or motor development, any of those things. And these are all free. These are services that are free that parents can connect to and get valuable information that might benefit them in qualifying for services that are available through the state and any of those things. So I encourage you, if you know someone who's got young children and they have concerns, you can connect them with ParentLink and they can take these surveys and fill out these questionnaires for free and get them some really valuable information to share with their medical providers. There's also resources. If you need some great parenting information on bedtime, procedures and to make things easier, you can reach out and we can connect you with what does a bedtime pass look like. There's all kinds of things that we have access to. The nice thing is that you don't have to do all the research on the computer. We can access it for you and share it with you. And there's also lots of books. We have a wonderful resource librarian who has some of the really cool children's books on handling trauma and emotions and dealing with potty training, any of those things that might come up. There's also resources available for incarcerated parents and families dealing with a loved one who's incarcerated. So great stuff available.
I just wanted to mention on our resource library right now, we currently are not able to send those out because our offices are closed like everywhere else. And so we have a lot of online materials that we can refer you to, but for a physical book, we kind of have a waiting period for that until the university opens back up. So just wanted to put that note out there.
Thanks for checking me on that. You're absolutely right. In the real world, under normal times, now that we're in the new normal, that doesn't apply. But under normal times, we'd be able to send those things out to you. But you're right. Abby has said that we have access to lots of things that you may not know about and lots of different sites that we can go to get information for you. And so there's also parenting classes, and it's really cool because we get the latest information from several different sources about parenting classes that are available. And a lot of the stuff is absolutely free. We can connect parents to these resources for free. Navigators also are another great service that we have. They are out in southern Missouri in kind of the Boot Heel area. They have those counties divided up, and they are there to provide support to parents, whether it be via phone or actually even in person. They can help take on some of those things that parents need to get connected with, and they're an awesome resource to that southern Missouri. And I think that is really about it. That kind of gives you an overview. If you have questions, you are more than welcome to contact us. We are there from 8 to 10 every single day. There will be someone there to answer your phone call Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, it's 12 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday. So there's generally someone there, except for a very small window of time that we can connect you to resources and help you find help with whatever it is that you have that's that you're dealing with in your family. Rachel, I think that's any questions that we can help with or concerns that we haven't hit on.
I'm going to be pausing the recording just